What is up, fight fans? We are back for another episode of The Real and the Rare. I'm your host, as always, Steven Rychel. Being joined with me on this fine evening is former world champion boxer Scotty the Bulldog Olson. Scotty, appreciate your time this evening, this afternoon. All depends on where you're catching these episodes at, my friends.
Oh, so nice to be on the show. I was really looking forward to it, and thank you very much.
Listen, like I said before we got on, we all got a story to tell, and I'm always happy to talk to anyone involved in the combat sports realm, manager, promoter, coach, whatever, active fighter, former fighter. You all have a story to tell. I want to help tell it. So always looking to have some conversations with you. But before we get started into all that, every episode here on the South Florida Tribune on The Real and the Rare is brought to you by Fight Wax. Fight Wax is the ultimate skincare for athletes of all active lifestyle. Helps treats cuts, swelling, scrapes, and abrasions, rejuvenates and restores stressed skin. Customers have used for soreness, stiffness, and recovery. Provides an ultra silky, non-greasy feel, deep hydration for everyday skin care. Help fight dry skin. Customers have used for skin disorders such as eczema, psoriasis. And when you do head over to fightwax.com, make sure you use that code SFTF15FW and show my guys over there some love. But with that being said, let's get into this one, Scotty. Obviously, you've been involved in the boxing world for 40, 50 years.
You're aging me now.
And it's changed so much over the years as well. I mean, we're basically entering in an era right now where pay-per-view buys mean absolutely nothing anymore when we're talking about the combat sports world. Not just boxing. Like you look at what's going on over in MMA, what the UFC's done over the past 6 months or so, getting away from their pay-per-view model. A lot of your mid-tier promotions, you don't see any pay-per-view walls. Everything's basically doing through the streaming world. If someone would have told you at the end of your boxing career there would be no more pay-per-views, everything would be streaming, would you have laughed?
I would not have believed that would happen. Just thinking about that. No, pay-per-view was really something else for us fighters to get on pay-per-view, and I just didn't think it was going to be something would take its place. I didn't think so.
Yeah, the streaming world has changed, but not just the combat sports world. I think really just how we consume, movies, sporting events. It's changed how we all go about that. Like, when we were, when you were, in the 80s and the 90s, you had to have some type of cable TV to be able to watch some of the events. And we're at a point in time right now that there is no boxing on terrestrial television anywhere. There's no licensing deal with anyone, with ABC, NBC, ESPN, none of it. No, nothing on Showtime, nothing like that. So literally the entire landscape has changed over the past 10 years. I just think it's one of the interesting ones. And when I was a kid, that was during Mike Tyson's heyday. So it's one of those things where I think it's interesting too, just because everything's changed. I mean, boxing's not the premier combat sport in the world anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're asking me, the UFC / MMA is falling in line with the same things I think that was plaguing boxing for a long time. For whatever reason that is, and I've been sitting there saying it for the last few years. In my personal opinion, I think as far as popularity growth as a combat sports goes, I think BKFC and bare knuckle boxing is kind of ruling that realm, so to speak. I mean, the UFC still makes their money because they have a lot of their diehard fan base that's going to tune in regardless. And I think the same goes for boxing. I mean, listen, for whatever reason, you put a Mexican contender in a card down in Mexico, and everyone turns out for that. For whatever reason, the Mexican fan base, I think, in my opinion, has really carried boxing through this downturn, so to speak. And I think it's something they could all fix. But I mean, I came across this one, right? This is just basically over the next few months, some of the main event fights that are coming on. And I think that the thing you ask yourself, I mean, there's probably on this list maybe 4 guys that you can easily sit there and say, I know who that is, or I know who this is, right? When we're coming to talk about combat sports, do you think it's more of the fan base has moved on compared to what probably being the fact that when we were looking at the boxing divisions in the 80s and 90s, they just had better superstars. They had guys that you wanted to see fight, or girls that you wanted to see fight. Now, I just don't think the interest is as strong as it used to be. What are your thoughts on this, Scotty? You think that we're having a downturn in the boxing superstar, or is it just, fan bases are just tuning out, and the younger fans are tuning into some of these other combat sports?
Well, as I've seen in my hometown in Edmonton here, I've seen a lot of kids that are coming up. Before, we didn't have as many gyms, and now we have more gyms. So there is quite a bit of interest there for the boys and the girls, and of course girls fighting is coming on so strong as well. It's when back in the day when we would have CBS or NBC, ABC, however it was, and we would be able to watch fights every single Saturday. Something was on, and I just loved it. I tuned into every one. I had a VCR, and I recorded every fight, and what fights they were. But they sometimes repeated the same fighters, so then you would get even more so of they would get more of a following, and you would end up finding one that you really like to consider more just being more closer to them, I guess. I don't
listen. I think we're they're just not the investment it is. I don't know if boxing needs to do more of what the UFC used to do with embedded series, is like when you're coming up to these events, having some type of sneak peek into the fighters' training camp, background into their life, to kind of get your casual fan more invested in, because you're always going to have your diehards. Like, you're always going to have your boxing enthusiasts that just purely love the sport of boxing. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about your amateur amateur card that basically has like 1 or 2 pro fighters on it just to make the card happen. And then you're looking at some of this young talent. A lot of guys love that. A lot of people love that. But some people, I think, just the attention span isn't what it is, and unless they're this name or that name, a lot of people, they just tune it out. Like, oh well, I don't really care for watching that one fight or this one fight. It's just, I just find it we're in this weird stage, and it's not just with boxing. I just think it's with combat sports itself, because UFC is kind of falling into these times too. Like they'll still get their viewership, couple mil per event, but they've built it up over the past 30 years or so, to the point where they do have their loyalists as well. But if you ask me, it's not as big of a fan base as what boxing's done in well over 100 years.
Yeah, boxing. So yeah, I agree with you there for sure. I just like you know, nowadays we're getting, actually, we had a little bit of a lull there, like over the last 10 years or so, 12 years. I think there had been a little bit of a lull there as well, but we didn't, I don't think the coaches, a lot of the older coaches that had been mainstream coaches for all the fighters, they were doing, anyway, they were teaching the fighters really, really, really well, the old time fighters, and then it changed. But now, uh, I think it dropped just when the coaching started to get a little bit more, uh, I don't know, important, I guess. But with the when I'm talking about
I agree with you, though. I think that a lot of we
yeah.
used to have, maybe 100 high level coaches, 30 years ago. And if you look
Mhm.
around just combat sports as a whole, I think you have a whole lot of personal trainers that aren't really boxing coaches or really MMA coaches or really they're personal trainers. They can get you in shape, but they're not going to find you the right fights. They're not going to keep you out of the bad fights.
Mhm.
The bad matchups, the one where you're going to some guy's hometown just to take an L. You don't, you have to have that coach, that manager in your corner in combat sports more now than ever. And I agree with you that you don't have a lot of people sharing that information. The Freddie Roaches of the world are few and far between.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, but I think these coaches now, they are starting. They're doing so many interesting things with the training. They're learning more about strength and conditioning and how to prepare an athlete, and then they just put that toward the fighter, and then the fighter just benefits so greatly. It's nice. It is really nice to see those kind of changes, just with those. More so with the coaching. I think that's been, it kind of had a lull, and I think it's coming back. I think that the Canadian national team and stuff, as an amateurs, they're doing really well, and they're starting to get kind of where my team was, with like not my team, but Lennox Lewis. We had Egerton Marcus, Asif Dar, myself, a few other fighters that were all pretty solid fighters, and we fought internationally and did a good job. And now, and then there, and now the trainers have just gotten a lot better, and I think that's just going to help so much in all the combat sports.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you had the distinct pleasure of competing for your country in the Olympics, right? You
Yes.
were, I think it said it was what, 88. It was Seoul, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, walk me through that experience, because not everyone is able to, one, represent your country in the Olympics, but be able to represent your country in a combat sport like boxing, which I still think, outside of a world of a world championship by the recognized sanctioning body, I think the Olympic medal is kind of the best other thing you could do with your combat sports career, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, what did it mean to you to be able to represent your country, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, just representing the country was incredible. Once I got going on, I won pretty much everything I sort of competed in, including '86. I won the Commonwealth Games gold medal. So for '88, I just automatically figured, well, I'll just win the Olympics. It's not quite that easy. I was prepared, and I did my very best. I ended up losing in the quarterfinal to Michael Carbajal, and that was I didn't really have a backup plan with having a loss at the Olympics. So now all of a sudden I have this loss, and I had no idea. I had no idea what to do. My family wanted me to go back to school and do other things uh, other than boxing, and all I wanted to do was turn pro. So that gave when I finally was able to come to terms with with myself and decide that boxing was the very best thing for me to do at that time. I don't know if that really answered your question, but
No, I mean, listen,
as,
we all have our every athlete has their different experience for it, whether you get the ultimate prize or not. Like, and not every time do you ever even possibly think of coming home without completing your goal. So you're not the only one. I mean, people tend to forget about this. Like Ronda Rousey's probably the most popular female combat sports athlete that we have in the world today.
yeah.
Everyone forgets that, like, the year before she won her bronze, she lost, and she didn't take it well either. Like, she had this great plan of what she wanted to do, and it was completely shattered, and it shattered her world. Her mom didn't see her for almost 2 whole years after her first loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you never planned for what could happen, and we all deal with things differently, whether it's good or bad or indifferent. So it's, you never really have a plan for the loss, because at the end of the day, combat sports athletes, you have to be supremely confident in yourself and the belief in yourself before you even step in there. Some people may say it's ego, it's cockiness, whatever. You have to have that edge that, the loss doesn't even creep in your mind as a potential plan moving forward. So, I mean, it's definitely, it's a rare sport, because you have to have special individuals to be high level combat sports athletes, regardless if we're talking boxing or in any of the other disciplines you want to go with.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Really do that. That's very nice. A lot about planning, and you might have a little bit of a plan. My plan was to turn pro, but how am I going to do that? I asked so many people here in town to try to form a corporate syndicate so I could fight in my hometown and just develop myself here. And I got turned down. Then other things weren't going well, and so now I'm stuck. Now my plan is really going downhill. So then I said, well, I have one more shot, and I jumped in a car with a very good friend of mine, and we drove down to Las Vegas, and I went at Top Rank, and they kind of turned me down the first day. And then, but I came back in the second day, and they couldn't believe I had the nerve to come back. So they offered me an opportunity. So yes, the plans don't always go as you want them to, but you keep forcing it a little bit every once in a while, forcing it, and sometimes being a little patient. Things were more so coming my way.
Patience, what's that? I don't know what that is. It's patience. Everyone wants everything now. But I mean, like, yeah, you have to bet on yourself in situations like that, and especially if you think about that time, boxing in Canada during that time period, they're probably telling you, they're probably sitting there, kid, why don't you pick up a hockey stick?
Yes. Those are the icons here, are people that are playing hockey. They follow it so much, and but let's say at the '88 Olympics, Lennox Lewis fought for Canada and won won the gold medal at the Olympics for Canada, and but we didn't really have a like much of a boxing infrastructure to help a top quality, top notch heavyweight and be able to move him in his career. So I think that's why Lennox, couldn't quite. I don't think his people or himself. I don't think he really saw it being able to happen in Canada, and decided to fight. And pursue his career in a couple other places. So, I think those were good decisions for him, because yes, none of us are holding a hockey stick, and it's very difficult to
I can
compete.
imagine during that time it was probably more frustrating for somebody like Lennox, because especially because he won, and just not having the infrastructure that kind of helped proceed him on to either keeping him there in Canada to groom him as a Canadian world champion, or just having tools at his disposal to keep him at a high level. So I guess it kind of makes sense why he's more known as like that UK or European world champion than anything. And it's because of stuff like that. So I'd imagine, you probably would have had to take a trip down to Top Rank and get your head knocked around a little bit. But it's one of those things. The fact that you were talking about it. Obviously, you got your licks in the first day. You come back the next day. Okay, what else you guys are going to teach me? And that a lot of times just that you're not going to push me away, push me to the side attitude is what makes people believe in guys like you when you're trying to take that step and put yourself into a position that no one else was going to put you in. You had to put yourself there, right? So I still think it's hard today, because you could be a world champion, but if you don't have, is what I was talking about, that coach, that manager, I don't think it matters. Yeah. Like, all right, let's just say you didn't go to the American top team and you came across some crappy coach that just was gonna drain every ounce of blood out of you dry, and wherever it left you, and had you taking fights all over the place where you're at your weight class. Meanwhile, this guy's cutting down too, and he's going to be twice the size of you come fight night. Taking a loss here, fighting somebody you shouldn't there. I think it's the thing about combat sports that we don't talk about. Like, you need to be a great fighter, and always looking to improve and being at your best. But you also have to have the best around you too.
Yes, and that is that 100%. And I was really blessed. I was coming up the stairs to go see Top Rank. Coming down the stairs at that time was a gentleman. He said hi to me, and he asked me if I was seeing Top Rank, and I said yes. And he said, "Well, he asked me if I was a boxer, and I said yes, I'm a fighter." And he says, "Well, great, I'm a manager." Well, he turns out to be Bruce the Mouse Strauss, just an absolute iconic figure, and having him in my corner as a manager, it held so much weight for me. I was able to get on television a lot more, and he did a tremendous job. At that time, I was training with Richie Sandoval, who was a former bantamweight champion of the world. And so I was with Richie for a long time, and then I went to Jerome Coffey, and I started picking up some more things for the end of my career, and I do see what you are talking about. I do.
So you come from a different. I think the golden era of boxing, my friend. I don't think look, I get it. The 50s, 60s, and 70s were a special time too. You had a lot of special athletes during them time, but I just think if you look at all the fighters from all the different weight classes, from the 80s all the way to the late 90s, it was just a special era. Roy Jones Jr., Bernard Hopkins, Oscar De La Hoya, Hector Macho Camacho, Vinny Panzianza, like all these guys that we can go on for another 2 hours just naming fun boxers from that era. And we're always going to forget somebody from that era, right?
Mm-hmm.
So coming from, I think, the toughest era in boxing history, who were some of the guys that inspired you? Who were some of the guys that you're like, man, I'd love to just be on a card with this guy. Maybe not be in the ring with him, but
Yeah.
just to get to see him perform up close and personal, and
Yeah.
maybe trade some trade secrets, in the locker room or whatever. Who did you look up to? Who was someone that you enjoyed watching?
Well, originally, like I was looking at pictures, and I had never seen a video, but just pictures of Rocky Marciano. That really inspired me. I always wanted to be able to throw a right hand, and I worked on that all the time. Uh, so from Rocky, once I started boxing, we had a couple of really good Canadian fighters here. One, Donnie Lalonde, and he had fought Sugar Ray Leonard. Uh, and so he did a good job for there. He was the light heavyweight champion, and Sugar Ray went up to a new higher division to light heavyweight to fight Donnie Lalonde. So I looked up to Donnie. We had a couple other guys named like Willie DeWitt and Sean O'Sullivan, who were Canadian fighters, both Olympians, both silver medalists. But I really, really held a torch, put them on a pedestal is what I did. And but once I got into Top Rank, things changed because I was a pretty big dog here in Edmonton, in Alberta. I guess you could probably say Canada, but I was a pretty big dog. And when I got down to Las Vegas, I realized how little I was and how inconsequential everything was. And oh my goodness. I thought I was a pretty darn good fighter, and then I'm sparring with the likes of guys like Kennedy McKinney. Um, oh gosh, we had another kid named Akeem, and he was about almost 6 feet tall. He was really tall. And Vince Phillips. It was just a lot of great fighters. But we also had some fighters in there that I would get some tips from that were nice enough to take a couple moments and offer me a few moments, a little bit of time, like Donald Curry, Mike McCollum, Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, who was light heavyweight champion, of course. And so there was quite a few people that I'd known and kind of grew up with in the sport. And of course, Ray Boom Boom Mancini is by far my favorite fighter, and a top close second to that is Bobby Chacon.
We all got our favorites, man. I say combat sports is the hardest because you have so many different variables, different eras, different weight classes. As you were talking about before, the women's side of it too, and that's really blown up. I would have to say over the last 15 years. Obviously, we a lot of people kind of feel, Layla Ali's kind of one of the best. Some people like to bring up, Chrissy Martin. Like you have some trailblazers, and some of the women today are absolutely amazing. Like Chrissy Shields, she's an amazing boxer. Amanda Serrano, I think, has done a lot to not just be a great champion, but help grow the sport of boxing, here in the United States, internationally. She does a lot of stuff in Puerto Rico, but is it surprising to you how much popularity and skill the women fighters have grown over, the past 10 years or so?
It really has. When I look at just taking a look at the ratings, let's say there was a middleweight or a welterweight or featherweight rating, and they would have a champion, maybe not, or a champion in that was going to try to be champion, but there would only be 2 or 3, 4 girls, 5 girls that were competing sort of in that category to win a title. Now I look at the ratings, and you have a champion, and you have dozens, literally dozens of women in every weight category, which is it's just so strong. I have a hard time even. We have one of the, well, I guess I would call her the best female fighter of all time. She's from here, from my hometown, as Jelena Mrjenovic. She's now a 8-time world champion. I think she might go on and maybe win one or two more if she wants. We have another great little smaller fighter my size, Alexis Kubicki, and she's just phenomenal. And we have some other girls that I've been watching. I just don't remember all of their names.
Like I said, it's hard when you're watching a lot of the young fighters to one, just keep up with them, because I think the level of talent that we have in combat sports now compared to what it was, I think the overall athlete is better. The overall athlete, the skill level. I mean, it varies. Obviously, at some point in time, you're going to have somebody, that's been training for their chance in the spotlight since they were 4 years old. Someone that's going to be from the time they were 8, the time they were 12, whatever. The journey's different for everyone, and I just think the skill level of all your boxers, men or women, has just, I think, jumped, which is why I think the other frustrating side, what we were already talking about, is just this lull that we're in, that boxing just doesn't have the star power that it once did. So it's hopefully more people kind of want to watch boxing, not just because they want to see this fighter or they want to see a knockout. I get it, because I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to bare knuckle boxing, because it's the most purest form of combat sport if you really break it down, right?
Yeah. I hear you. We do right now. We do have some outstanding guys. Some are entering into their prime. Some are out of, or going past their prime or out of their prime. Like Canelo Alvarez, maybe he's starting to get on that back nine. So
yeah, I don't think there's anybody who's competed as long as he did, man. I know we've had guys, competing into their 40s and whatnot. I think he's just about to hit 40, but he's been competing since he was like 15 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of these things where he's a star that it's not gonna be easy to replace him. And that's why I pulled up that list of the fights from now till like the end of July. There's maybe 4 guys' names on there I recognize.
Yeah,
I think that's the problem. Now, we would have gone back 10 years ago. You would have pulled up cards from various events over a few month period of time, and you probably wouldn't been able to name both fighters headlining both, whatever card. Yeah, I just think for whatever reason we're in this weird era. That's why I'm going to ask you about this one.
Yes.
Jake Paul, is he good for boxing or good for himself?
I've tuned in. I've actually, I know a lot of really, really acute boxing fans that just don't want to give him that attention by tuning in or by watching. I've taken the time and I've watched these fights, and I don't know. It's a little bit awkward to see somebody who hasn't really had to go through some of the hardships that a regular fighter would typically go through to get to the top. And you have to give him a lot of big props, because he's, he was after financial security as well. And he does have that now, so I don't know if I would. He hasn't been bad to boxing in my opinion. But I know myself, I get a little jealous when I see what I was making back in 1992,
and
he's making billions. So it kind of, truthfully pisses me off quite a bit. But
So
yeah.
way I'll break it down like this, Scotty. I think one, if he didn't have Amanda Serrano in his corner, no one would be paying attention to him first and foremost. I'm with you along the lines like he didn't pay his dues to get these big fights and things of that nature. But I'll also second you with this. Can you name me a fighter that as they were coming up, as they were cutting their teeth, learning how to become a boxer, has fought in the caliber level of fighter that Jake has? Now, agreed, I think that he was being a weight bully, that he was purposely finding MMA fighters past their prime, not actual boxers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what kind of helped him kind of grow his stature to where it is. So I agree with you that part. I don't respect him for that aspect of it, but we can't disrespect anything he's done the last two fights. Fighting a legend's son. Obviously, there was no big weight difference between them like there was with a lot of the other fights. So I didn't give him that much one, but now he was about to put on another spectacle with the Davis fight, and thankfully that fight fell out, and Anthony Joshua came in.
Yes.
So win, lose, or draw, I have to give him credit for that because it takes a crazy mofo knowing that you're probably going to get your head sent to Saturn to be able to still go in there and fight Anthony. I thought the fight was absolutely terrible. I thank the combat sports heavens above, whoever's in control of this nonsense, that we're able to see Jake get stopped, and we didn't have to go through another handful more rounds of him trying to shoot double leg takedowns on a boxer.
Yeah.
But as a promoter, he hasn't hurt the sport. I will say that he's done whatever he can to make it safer, to make sure that the fighters are being paid what they're worth, that he's going about helping to build the sport. I will give him that.
I agree with that. Yes.
But the other side of it, isn't it entertainment at the end of the day too? Like, I'm hard on Jake. Don't get me wrong. Like, I may seem like I'm defending him, but I will give him his due where he's earned it. He has earned his due on certain aspects, especially on the promoter side. Now, if he stays consistent and continues to fight boxers in his weight class that are ranked, I will have no problem what he does with that moving forward. If he wins, he wins. He loses, he loses. But if he's fighting ranked contenders in his weight class, I have no problem whatever he does moving forward. If he wants to continue with the carnival fights, then that's what you're going to be. You're going to be a carnival sideshow, and what's going to happen when Amanda Serrano retires.
Yeah, and with him, being close to Amanda Serrano, and then having some good fighters on those undercards that he's fighting on, having a few other fighters that are trying to make a name for themselves, and he's giving new fighters an opportunity to try to go for it. I like that part of the business. Entertainment. I always consider myself more of an entertainer than a fighter. I like fighting. I like duking it out and stuff, but I really like the roar of the crowd and people cheering for me. And it was a really special and special and just a premium time for me in my life. And those were nice things that I can remember. But just how can I put it? Not the celebrity part. Anyway, I lost track there.
It's all right. You were just talking on something that I did want to touch on that I talked to a lot of fighters about. And yeah, you guys are entertainers, and I still feel what you fighters get from the walk from the dressing room to out to the ring cage, whatever, is the most naturalist drug that you could give any human being. Be in control of, in a sense, the emotions of thousands to tens of thousands of people, depending on the size of the arena you're fighting in, on what's going to happen over the next few minutes. They're literally at the tip of your hands, man. So it's one of those things where I said it's probably better than any drug you'd find on the street on what an athlete has when they're walking out to go fight.
That's true, and there's a lot of fighters that I've seen that are just scared to death from the time they get there to the dressing room to the time in the dressing room while they're getting their gloves, warming up, out to the ring. They're just a nervous wreck, and then you have some other fighters. Vinny Pazienza, who you'd mentioned before. There's a lot of fighters. Tommy Morrison. Myself, I'd like to include myself in the fact that I enjoyed entertaining so much. Those walks to the ring were really special, and I couldn't put a price tag on how I felt once I got into the ring and the fans were cheering for me. I couldn't put a price tag on it. So yeah, I didn't make the millions and multi-millions of dollars like these guys were able to make. And
the experiences at the end of the day, Scotty. It's about the experience, not the money.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And you mentioned a name that I haven't heard and I love is Tommy Morrison. I think he was another guy that I think had a period of his career stolen by politics, if you really ask me. But I don't know if you've seen, his son is following in the family lineage there. Rumor has it, I mean, he's been trying to fight Jake Paul for the better part of 3.5 years. Yeah. But rumor has it is the next fight is going to be another bare knuckle fight for him. So he's going to be, and I'm obviously going to be absolutely biased and hope that he's going to be on that July 3rd card here in Philadelphia. That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've seen a lot of guys that with kids from that era have children inside the cage. We already seen, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight Jake Paul. You have Hussein Rahman son. He's boxing. Kinsey Morrison, Tommy Morrison's son's been in it. What do you think about, I guess, the nepotism in sports? How much it's grown, over the last few decades? Like a lot of times you wouldn't see the kids of a kid get following in their father's or mother's footsteps going to this sport or that sport. And I'm not just talking about boxing. Like we see, I think the NFL has like record number of superstars' parents over the last 2 decades that been able. Dads played for this team, sons played for the same team. Other sons are playing for other teams. I mean, you got Deion Sanders. Both of his kids were on teams last season. The nepotism in sports is kind of a pleasant surprise over the last decade, wouldn't you think?
Well, it is nice to see things coming along and going stronger. It warms my heart to see other fighters that have good trainers now that learned along the way, and then we have like great trainer. We had one of the greatest trainers in Canada, well, of all time. He's just got inducted into the International Hall of Fame, and that was Russ Anber. And he's just incredible. He's been in the ring with almost a lot of champions, and but it's really neat to be his friend. But anyway, sorry, I just had to cut that in.
It's all right.
Just one of the beautiful people in the sport. Fight. I just see it progressing. I see it progressing when I go to the gym and I see the interest. Kids or the coaches are now telling the kids some history. So instead of me going into a gym just blind because I haven't been in a gym for 10 years, instead of me going in blind like that, they've already maybe said something, or they may have watched one of my fights on TV or on YouTube or that social platform that they, that has helped connect boxing so much instead of just the regular televised fights. I love those televised fights, but social media has been really good at helping fighters get a little bit more of a name and put their name out there.
Yeah, it's like I said, the growth is crazy. Two more before I let you go. Okay. I think you've already slightly touched on it, but just by some of the things you've said, where did the Bulldog come from? Who gave you that nickname? Because I always have a thing about nicknames. Nicknames is something your family gives you, your trainer gives you, your teammates give you. It's not something a moniker you can give yourself. So how did the nickname Bulldog come about?
Well, originally my coach Paul Horty, I had hair. I wasn't always bald, but I had hair and it was blonde, and he called me the Blonde Bomber. That was when I was amateur for a little while, and then I really liked this Frank the Animal Fletcher, so I was Scotty the Animal Olson, and then from there I was training in training camp and. Doing all my work, and I was stopped during what I was doing, and surprisingly enough, it was Russ Amber, and he just looked at me. He saw me, he looked at me, and he said, "Scotty, you're the Bulldog." And then from then on, it's just everybody was able to attach that to me. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about the celebrity fights and things of that nature. It looks like all the obstacles are out of the work, and we're going to get Pacquiao Mayweather too. Now, this is, I think, the problem that is wrong with this era. This is a fight we should have gotten 15 years ago, right?
Yes.
Now, yes, I'm not against any, listen, I love combat sports. I love fights like this regardless. I still would have rather seen them when they were both in their prime to see this, but have any excitement around this, or is it kind of what I just said? I'd have rather seen this 15 years ago.
Yeah, truthfully, I'm a little bit excited about it. Yeah, I know they've a little bit past their prime. Manny has fought recently and fought to a draw for a world welterweight title. He's still in the mix. You can't count him out. And Floyd's always in shape. He always keeps himself in shape. He's always around a gym. And so I think it's going to be a lot more interesting than a lot of these other, every other celebrity fight kind of we've seen or matchups. I think this is going to be the most real one that boxing fans will have been able to see.
Look, I love these fights regardless, but like I said, it's one of those things where, after the Margarito trilogy, it would probably been the proper time to see this fight. And notice I said trilogy, not after the fourth fight. I said the trilogy. I mean, it's you're always gonna love to see stars like this, but it's just like one of these things. Like, are you just trying to rekindle like the old hype around the fight? Because I mean, even when the first fight happened, I felt it was, 5 years too late, 10 years too late, whatever. But
yeah,
when they're in shape and they're not just doing it for a paycheck, it's definitely not something you're going to turn your nose up at. But the excitement level isn't nearly what it would have been, years ago. At least just in my opinion. I could be wrong. I could be a cynical asshole, but whatever.
That's it. I know the interest isn't quite up there like a lot of them, but if I had the opportunity after I had retired for a few years, it's just my health wasn't good. brain, mentally and physically, I just was just broken down. But if I had been in relatively good condition after 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years off, I might have considered bringing Michael Carbajal up and having a bit of a slug out with them, just for old time's sake, and for fans to just have a little bit of fun for a night. I'm really getting excited over the bare knuckle fighting. I like that stuff. A lot of the MMA. I'm watching more jujitsu now. I have my little nephew. He's in jujitsu,
Yeah,
and
there you go. That's how you do it, brother.
and he's just amazing. He went to his first tournament and he won.
There you go, dude. I've been there. I got a Naga series grappling belt over here in my corner from when my ex stepdaughter. She was going through some, but she was like bigger than most of the girls her age. So when she went to compete, she couldn't compete in the kids division. She had to compete in the adult divisions. So she was freaking terrified. Mm-hmm. So, but she wound up. She wanted to get like her nose pierced the 1 year. I was like, you bring me home a belt, you can do whatever you want on the boardwalk, right? So the first match she gets the pretty big girl. She winds up real quickly getting her down, get side control, quick submission, right? Mm-hmm. The championship match, she has to go against an Army Reserve woman who's about 33 years old.
So tough.
She's 15 at the time, so she's I'm like Kayla. She's just another person.
Yeah,
you're faster than her. She might be slightly stronger than you just because of the Army background. I'm like, just do what you normally do.
Yeah.
And she actually wound up getting her in a Kimura, and actually she separated the woman's shoulder because she wouldn't tap.
Oh, holy! Geez.
So she won via technical submission. But it's like one of those things where like when you see them being able to accomplish those things, like she's long forgotten about the belt. She's moved on to she's married now, all this other stuff. But like it's one of those things where like that's a moment in time. Like he's never gonna forget that. She's never gonna forget that, regardless if he wound up using it. And that's the thing about it, is just toning your skills in case you come across some freaking obnoxious a-hole and you have to use it.
Yeah.
Same thing with boxing or anything else. So it's like, I love when the next generation has the aptitude to want to hop in the gym and learn themselves up.
Mm-hmm.
So is it something your little one does regularly, or is it?
This is his little name is Hudson. And he's just a wonderful kid, but he's only about, I think he's just turned 7, so he's pretty young, and but doing serious stuff on the mats and taking it very seriously, and he takes it too seriously. I think he's not enjoying his being a kid quite as much. I think he's doing his
but sometimes what you should probably do is say, if you want this, you want to go do these tournaments, and you have to put the training in and all that, but you also have to be a kid, live your life.
Yes,
there's life outside of the gym.
Yeah.
You'll have plenty of time to lose years of your life inside of the gym as you get older. Enjoy being a kid.
Yeah. But the neat thing is that he found it's nice to find anything in life that you enjoy, and if you enjoy something, chances are you're going to spend a little bit more time doing it, and you'll end up being better at it than others. It's quite a progression like that.
I'm surprised with the boxing background, he's in jiu-jitsu, though. I'll say that much.
Yes, there was I think I bought him. I think I bought him one of those little heavy bags with the little tiny boxing gloves. I think you hang it on a door knob or something, and he hit it. Well, that was when he was about 4 or 5, and but now with this MMA. MMA stuff, and the jiu-jitsu is just a phenomenal sport. I've really found something else that I enjoyed as a combat sport. That's for sure.
Is it now? Have you done? What about you? Have you gotten the gi on and done some jujitsu?
Yeah, when I was young, I didn't have any athletic ability. I was a very tiny guy, but I was really strong and I was very stubborn. But I did was in a handful of sports, and judo was one of them. So
Oh,
I did judo for a handful of years. I think the highest I got was a green belt, and I had a very good friend who is friends with me to this day, that we trained together a lot, and and I remember when I told my sensei that I wanted to try boxing, and he didn't think it was a very good idea. He figured maybe I'd just continue on with judo, and I wanted to try boxing, and uh, I guess that it seemed to work out, but I don't think it would have worked out in judo or any other sport I tried. It's a kind of a specialty thing. Yeah.
it's uh, it's definitely cool here, and you got that judo background. That's pretty cool, cool feather too as well. But last question is, I typically do my Mount Rushmore picks, but you kind of like alluded to me earlier what your boxing Mount Rushmore will be. So I'll go this way. We're a month removed or so from Brain Injury Awareness Month, right?
Hmm.
Um, what are your thoughts on how not just combat sports athletes, but high compact sports athletes in general deal with either potential CTE issues or TBI issues that they should be looking to either train better, be better at? Do you think where we're at as the uniformity, like, because obviously NHL, and NFL are major league sports that have to deal with head injuries,
Yeah.
but boxing, MMA, and the other combat sports is something that is something that it's kind of like the unspoken rule that a lot of you guys know you're signing up for one way or another. It's not something that you want to have happen, but just it's the what's the saying? It's the nature of the beast, the nature of the sport, right?
Yeah. It's
Do you think there's something that could be done that isn't being done, or do you think we're in a good spot on trying to reduce the amount of athletes that are going to wind up coming across this and give them the health and care they need once they do?
Yeah. Well, I don't see, if you change the rules at boxing or Muay Thai, or if you change the rules and try to make it any safer than it really is, I think you'd just be taking away so much from the sport, because that is a part of it. Are the fact that boxing and these other combat sports are very high and football as well, and others. But it's just very high with TBIs. I had mine wasn't so much from boxing. I'm a little bit affected, but I had a cardiac arrest, and with that arrest, I didn't have a lot of oxygen for a bit, and so I do have some issues, which you probably might have noticed today, but you know I don't think there's anything you can really do to really do that. Maybe the making weight. I think when you're draining your body, like I drain my body so much, and to make weight. So making weight, you also drain a lot in your head. In your head, your brain kind of sits in. It must sit in some sort of a little bit of water or something, and when it ricochets off your skull, I think that hydration would be, if anything, hydration might be one of the things that would help fighters.
I think
Not
you're spot on there, Scotty. I think you're spot on there. I
thank
talk
you.
about it a lot. With a lot of the athletes I talk about is the rapid extreme weight cutting. I think is the most dangerous thing that we have in our sport today. I think that there should be hydration clause for every athlete. That after you sign the fight contract, that the commission comes in, they see where your natural body weight is, and say like, hey, Kay, this is where you're at. This is you're only allowed to cut X amount of weight for this fight camp, and that keeps you out of your current weight class, then so be it. You have to. I think that's one of the things that I think, on top of the fact that you guys are throwing hands, fists, knees, whatever at each other's head. It's not. The cutting weight thing is a big thing, and you mentioned it. Like your brain sits on a very thin layer of water, and when you're burning it out of you to make weight, like not only that, I think if you want to show that they can make the weight, I think you should do it 2 weeks before the fight. Give them a chance to rehydrate. We know that he or she can make the weight, and let them fight at a natural weight. Regardless of if they hydrate heavier than the other, we know they both can make this weight. This is the weight that they fight at. And just have a hydration clause in it. You can only go back up this amount, and we fight at this, where there's enough water in your body that you haven't completely depleted yourself to the point of you're more susceptible to getting that concussive blow, or that could potentially cause damage. You could take concussive blows and not be knocked out, and not be dazed or seeing stars or whatever, and it just, you don't realize it because it just seems like one that you can eat, but it your brain is bouncing off the walls of your skull, and that's not good. Yeah. So I think, yes, you're spot on there with the weight cutting thing. I don't think the only thing I would have to say I would like to see less of is hard sparring within a month of major fights.
That's an excellent point.
Because, listen, we all know at some point in time you got to be thrown in the fire at your gym, and you're going to have hard sparring. But I think if you're getting ready, if you're in a fight camp, things of that nature, that it shouldn't even been risked. Not a lot of people know this, but when former UFC champion Forrest Griffin fought Anderson Silva here in Philadelphia, he was knocked out 8 days prior to the fight.
Wow.
So, I'm sitting there, I thought it was a quick stoppage or whatever, but when I finally got home, I seen the look in Forrest's eyes. I'm like, oh no, he wasn't there. That wasn't a quick stoppage. Thank you, referee, for saving that man's life, because Anderson Silva was probably going to send him to another realm. And you've seen it a lot of times where guys before you thought they had good chins or whatever, and they're getting dropped more, whether it be old age, whether it be it was a rough weight cut, so they're not able to kind of give you the performance they're used to. So it's one of these things where I don't think it gets talked about enough, but those would be my two things. One, I'm on with you. The weight cutting thing, I think you can do it in a way where you're not depleting the athlete away and putting them more at risk. Because a lot of fighters don't. I literally talked to a guy when PFL was World Series of Fighting. He was their champion, and he literally told me that the day before weigh-ins he was 25 pounds over the contracted limit and made the weight without a problem. So you cut off 25 pounds of water weight.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now, he had a bad performance that night, and he was stopped en route to lose that title.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah, a lot of fighters have gone through that. I've gone through that numerous times, just not being hydrated enough back into my system. And that really isn't a good thing when you're. What happened to me, and I would think a lot of fighters, I can't point my finger, but for myself, I would, instead of training for the fight and watching videos and technically trying to work things out and all these things to win the fight, my focus wasn't just, it was on losing weight. And that was my training camp. Okay, well, how much weight do I have to lose? Okay, so now I know I have 20 pounds and it's within 8 weeks. Okay, let's get it done without looking at the things that I'm going to have to do uh, in the ring against a particular opponent. I think that just training to get into some kind of shape. I don't think, I think every fighter should be in some kind of shape, pretty good shape anyway, so he can then get a little bit more training and get topped up. But I, you know, with having with having fighters that when their weight. Oh, I lost myself.
You got
Anyway.
lost in the fog again. Listen, you're not the first guy I've had on where we've had had issues. I actually had a guy on about a month ago. He was the first NFL player to win a civil suit against the NFL for traumatic brain injury.
Wow.
And he just wrote a book and stuff like that. So like he had a lot of cool stories, and he actually had somebody in the room with him when we were doing the interview to make sure like he would either remember points or what he was talking about to remember where he was at. So listen, don't if you get lost in the fog, don't worry about it. We'll help you find your way back, my friend.
Oh, Steve, I appreciate that so much. It's been,
Is it something you're ever conscious about, like when you go and have conversations with people that you wind up getting lost on somewhere and you're in the middle of a conversation and you don't know where you're at?
It's one of the strangest things, that and not remembering where things are, but being in a conversation and things are going along okay, and then there's just like a wall comes up and getting past that wall is pretty much impossible. You just have to kind of change the subject, and so it's the embarrassment is there, and that happens, so continually. It's hard when go a lot of times going somewhere and not knowing why I'm going there. What was I supposed to do here? So a lot of it's about trying to write things down and making sure that if I park somewhere, I've taken pictures of my car in the parking lot, and pictures of where I'm walking into, so I might be able to find myself after. So there's quite a few difficulties that I think a lot of us fighters go through, and some go through a lot worse than I do. Some, my speech is, a little bit. I don't think is horrible. It's noticeable, but I know a number of fighters that their speaking has really regressed as a result of a lot of the damage. And I don't think it was even the fights. I think it was just the sparring in the gym. I think over sparring. You were talking about. Yeah, but I think that's another one. Not sparring hard after a certain point of time, but also, keeping the mileage down a little bit. I mean, it's only a fight. You already know how to fight, but you don't have to get hit that hard that many times to figure out.
We already proved we're tough. We don't have to sit there and beat our head against the wall just because you think that's what it is. And that's why I said what I said about hard sparring in training camps. Like, exactly. You kind of already touched on it. You already have two fights. You have to fight against the scale, and then you have to fight against your opponent. I should be doing two things: making sure my nutrition is on there. Yes, I need to be working out in the gym and working and doing things correct, but in cohesiveness with a game plan that is tailored to my opponent, not to just beat my head against some other guy's glove or fist.
Oh, like I went through a whole training camp, and forgot that the guy that I'm fighting is left-handed. I never brought left-handers in to spar with. I didn't concern myself. It wasn't even on my mind because I was so focused on making sure that I did whatever I could to make the weight and make my own, be able to make my own payday for that. I didn't want to miss paydays, so they're pretty important for me to make sure that I was ready for.
Yeah, it's something I don't think that is said enough. I just hope that the gyms and coaches that we've seen today aren't putting their young and talented fighters up against the ringer like we used to see them. So, but as we wrap this one up, Scotty, what I typically do is kind of throw the proverbial microphone over to you. Anyone you would like to thank, shoot out any social media sites that you might have, any websites, any charities that you're working with, any parting shots or final words to our listeners, Scotty.
That's a whole bunch of things to remember right there. Let's see if I can piece it off a little bit. Well, holy cow. Let's see, where would I start? Becoming a good fighter for me, or a good athlete, that's just pretty fluky because I don't have a lot of athletic ability, but I was pretty strong, and I could take a punch, and I could naturally punch, so it helped. But with so keeping just that in mind, um, you know, trying to make sure I got this right. Just give me one second. What you were just saying.
All right, so basically, what I do here at the end, Scott, is I'm throwing it over to you. If I'm throwing it over to you, anyone you would like to thank, anyone that's involved in your life that is helping you out, shooting out any of your social media sites that you might have, any charities that you're working with, any final thoughts that you want to lay upon our listeners tonight. The time is yours, my friend.
Thank you. I think, becoming that fighter, like I was trying to say, but getting good. It wasn't just on me. I had a team of people continuously around me throughout my career. Other people came in to offer tips to me, and that those were very nice things. So I would have to thank, so many people, like everybody at Top Rank. I mean, Bob Arum and Bruce Trampler, they're just the greatest people to me of all time, and they helped me with my career. And I would like to thank those two as being my promoter and matchmaker. Bruce the Mouse Strauss, legendary. I love him to death, and he's still around, and I'm really happy that he managed me during my career. He did a stellar job. I guess a couple more people, my family, just my mom, my dad, and my two brothers. They were really, really supportive of me. When a lot of people, didn't think I was going to make it, they said, well, give it a shot. So they give me that extra little bit of a bonus. So there are some people, and my trainer, Paul Horty, that's another one. Jerome Coffey, Richie Sandoval, of course. I'm on Instagram at Scotty Olson 12. And you can find me on Facebook pretty easy. So yeah, if you just click my name in, and I usually have a lot of friends, but if maybe I can work around that so I can add some more people. I'm just really grateful to have had a career that I enjoyed. People and I liked it that people liked watching me do my job. That's pretty special. It doesn't happen for everybody. It's and the fans particularly, because their support is just unbelievable. In a hockey country, I was able to have fans love boxing or really starting to like me uh, because of all my television exposure. So all the TV people, ESPN, pay-per-view, they were all wonderful to me too. That's where I would kind of put things at.
Well, appreciate your time this evening, Scotty. Definitely, loved hearing about your story, learning about you, where your career took you and things of that nature. So it was great talking with you, brother. We'll definitely have you back on here again sometime in the future. Other than that, appreciate the time, my brother, and we'll be in touch. We'll do it again soon.
Steve, thank you so much. I'm really honored to be on. So thank you very much again.
Not a problem, my friend. It was definitely our pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That was former world champion boxer Scotty the Bulldog Olson. Again, appreciate everyone for tuning in on this one. The people in the chat room, always appreciate hearing new stories from different people is definitely a fun one there. Big shout out to Lincoln for hooking us up with Scotty Olson tonight, guys. If you haven't yet already done it, hit that QR code in the upper left hand corner there. Like, subscribe, share. We're getting closer to our 2K giveaway. Getting closer to our watch hours for monetization for YouTube as well. So again, like, subscribe, share, show us some love here on the South Florida Tribune. But other than that, this was another episode of The Real and the Rare. I'm your host, as always, Steven Rychel. See you guys in a few more days on another channel, on another station. Catch you later, guys. Peace out.